our panelists today. We have engineers and scientists from Amazon joining us. So we have Raluca, who's an applied scientist. We have Saranya with us, an applied science manager. We also have Beth, who's a principal ontologist. And then we have two software development engineers in Princess and Gordon. Thank you so much for joining us. And I will probably kick off by asking you to introduce yourself so that everyone gets to know you a little better. Raluca, do you want to go first?
Hi, Mike. Sure. I'm really happy to be here. First of all, thank you for organizing this event. I think it's amazing, and I'm really happy to be connecting with people that want to learn how to code, or that are coding, or engineers. That's really cool. And I'm also happy to be in an event that supports minorities. I think this is really, really important in this day and age. So a bit about myself. I am an applied scientist now. I have been through software engineering. I've been an academic. I've been a researcher. Yeah, now I'm an applied scientist in S3, which means that I'm looking at the requests and trying to find out why some of them are not performing the best. So I do data analytics to understand performance issues and to understand especially the variability in performance that we see sometimes.
Thank you so much, Raluca. I will come back to you on S3 because people might not know what it is. But Saranya, do you want to introduce yourself and give us a bit more about you?
Absolutely. Hey, everyone. Nice to meet you all today. My name is Saranya, and I am an applied science manager. Maybe I would decode that a little bit to say maybe machine learning science manager, if that resonates with you. So I currently manage a team within Amazon Alexa AI organization, where my team is a mix of scientists and engineers. What we mainly work on is to solve problems for customers in terms of understanding customers' questions and providing them with the best answers possible to give a great customer experience. So that's what we do. Thanks for having me here. Looking forward to talk to you all.
Thank you so much, Saranya. Beth, the stage is all for you.
Hey, okay, so I'm principal ontologist at Amazon. Most people don't know what an ontologist does. So one example is, for any of you who are familiar with the Amazon shopping site, and down the side, you have like a list of products and you can sort of drill in by browsing on those. That browse tree is built by ontologists. And then kind of on the team I work on Alexa. So if you ask Alexa a question about general knowledge and she gives you an answer, that's probably been kind of organized by ontologists as well. So in my role as principal, I try to kind of work across groups of ontologists and try to like break down silos, drive any tech improvements kind of across them, and do things like bring in external speakers.
Thank you so much. I think we'll have time to go a little bit more in details with specific questions. So that's great to have you here, Beth. Princess, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep, thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. That, in fact, I would love this idea if I had been such an opportunity to get introduced to the software team and the engineer, how it would look like when I started my career. Thanks, Kimberly. This is a nice podium. So a little bit of myself. I'm Princess. I'm in the software industry since 2004. I started my career as a software developer. So I was working in my video and image codec compression is my area. So I develop video and image compressions, for example, MP4 or H.264. So those kind of compression. I'm working the compression technology. I'm an algorithmic developer to compress the video as much without distorting the quality. So that's my area. So I'm here with Amazon for the last 6 months. I have worked in different genres like automotive industry, consumer electronics, and different places. So that's a little about me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Princess, and welcome. Last but not least, Gordon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming and organizing this session. So I'm a software development engineer specializing in imaging and computer vision with the Amazon Lab 126 camera team. I work on camera ISP, which is the image sensor pipeline, algorithms for Amazon branded consumer electronics products with cameras. Examples are the Echo Shows and the Echo Look fashion camera. I also develop internal tools for program managers and engineers to make their work more efficient. And outside work, I contribute to open source and outreach projects like this one. That's it.
That's great. Thank you, Gordon. We have questions that start to come in, but I will start with one of mine, if it's okay. And I will kind of ask all of you, maybe I'm assuming, maybe wrongly, that you've all written code before. And I was just wondering, what was your journey? So when did you start coding? What was the context in which you started? And maybe what was the programming language of choice, if it was a choice at the time? I don't know, Saranya, do you want to start with this?
Absolutely. I mean, in my case, I think coding was something that I started at school. But when I was at school, I learned Fortran and COBOL as programming languages. And then pretty much from then on, developed interest in coding. But in the recent times, Python has been my favorite choice to go for. And something that I always learn is how continuously evolved the programming languages are, and how easy it is for you to learn those now, especially with all these different avenues that are available, for example, Coursera and all these other places that you could go and quickly learn. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about folks from the recent times who are able to do that now.
Thank you so much. Raluca, do you want to have a go?
Sure. The first time I learned about programming and I saw a computer, I was able to program a computer, was in secondary school. I was about 15 years old, and we had an amazing teacher. She also developed her own book with algorithms. So she started first from algorithms and then introduced us to programming. And the main reason was that at that time, most books were using Pascal as a programming language, but she wanted to use C and C++. So because she thought that would be more useful for us. So we learned on her own book, and that was a good thing for me, I think. I really liked it, and I pursued it afterwards.
Thank you so much. Princess, do you want to have a go?
Yeah, sure, Mike. So I started with Logo when I was in school, and it basic. Later it went to the basic programming language, which has those numbers and it kind of a flowchart coming into. That's a very basic thing. And I did my engineering. That's when I was introduced to the C and assembly. So C was my eye opener. It was like a fascination to me. Till date, I wonder at the thing. So it's C and CPP were my area. So that's how I started, and I started developing. I used to solve Sudokus using C. I used to do some small graphics using C when I was in college. And luckily I got the opportunity to work in video, so which all involves a lot of C and assembly. So that's how my career has been.
Thank you. Gordon, what was your introduction?
Yeah, so well, actually, I was given a computer sort of as a reward for an exam I had in primary school, and started with basic, and discovered that actually I more enjoy actually programming my own programs than playing games, and I think that was the start. But in terms of professional career, so for my PhD I use MATLAB. And then moving on to Qualcomm, we use a proprietary language and JavaScript for a set-top box company. Then more recently, for backend camera software in both Broadcom and Amazon, I've been using C, C++, and Python.
Great, thank you. Beth, I will have probably two questions for you. So the first one is the same as everyone else, and then the next one will come from Jack right after. Thanks.
Okay, so for the first one, I started in 1985. My brother got a Commodore 64, and I was allowed to use it if I paid 50 pence for half an hour. And so I would try to write those choose your own adventure games in BASIC, but the tape always overflowed before I could do more than a few pages. And then kind of for coding today, I'd use Python mostly because we don't need to, yeah, you can kind of write simple things very fast in it. So
I get very fast for prototyping, I guess. The next question comes from Jack, who's asking, what's a good place to start with ontology?
So there's quite a lot of kind of courses out there that you can take online. I can't remember if there's a Coursera one, but there's definitely one. I think it's HPI. And if you look for any courses with titles such as ontology or knowledge graphs or taxonomy or knowledge representation, anything with those kind of keywords is a good start.
Thank you so much. I have a question on the back of that. If you had to describe what a knowledge engineering is, can you give a short description or a short definition?
It's about modeling real world concepts in a very structured, machine readable way.
Thank you. The next question is for all of you, and it has more to do with I guess the culture at Amazon and what's the most challenging and the least challenging aspect of working at the company. Maybe Saranya, do you want to go and take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined Amazon about a year back. And the most challenging aspect for me has been the scale of the organization, right? So there's so many things going on. There are so many moving parts. So coming with engineering and science background, it is still a lot to learn and being faced with. So, but one thing that is super amazing, which is also kind of ties in with the least challenging part, is the organization has got excellent people who are willing to help and give you all the right level of information. There is great energy, and Amazon supports leadership principles, and people breathe and live by it, which is great. So that's something that I've also found to be super helpful in the challenging times when I'm trying to learn. So yeah, that's been my experience.
Thank you. Raluca, do you want to add to that a little bit?
I think I agree with Saranya that the scale is the most challenging thing. And especially in the first days that you join, you feel bombarded with so much information. It feels like you can't really get around all of it. But you do get, so you do learn how to use it in your own advantage. So it does get easier. It's a steep learning curve, but it's really worth it after a while. I would also add that although challenging, it's very interesting. So it does keep you interested in the subject, in the domain. And the least challenging, for me, I think the least challenging was the fact that you do have a team. The team definitely supports you, and you can see, you can bring an impact. So it's, how should I put it? I think you can bring an impact. The scale and the complexity gives everyone the opportunity to bring something to the table. And I really like that. Even if your area is narrow and even if your area doesn't align perfectly with other people's area, you can bring something to the table. And I like that.
Great. Princess, I feel like you want to add up to that, and then you're probably pretty new to the company, so that might be fresh in your mind, this question.
Sorry. I totally agree with what Raluca and Saranya had told. They have put it in a very fine way. Challenges make the day interesting, right? That every day when I start my work, if I know what I'm going to face, if I don't have any problems, and if it is a monotonous work, really I don't feel that day is contented. That day is not a satisfactory day to me. But when you come with some problems and when you approach and solve it, when it opens the window for multiple things, right? So that makes the day interesting. So the challenging thing in Amazon is like, as Saranya has told, like what we know is very little. There are 1,000 things across you. There are so many windows that to keep yourself updated with the running thing, right? To keep yourself updated with what is running in the team and what is going on, how the market is going on, where we should approach, how the thought should be, right? The thought process. So that is really challenging. There is no slow motion thing. It's like you have to be steady, and it is a steep learning curve, as Raluca has pointed out. So yeah, there is a learning that makes your day interesting and challenging, right? Yeah, that's my point of view.
Thanks, Presence. Another question for all of you, maybe starting with Gordon. Do you think someone can get into the path of becoming an engineer or a scientist without a STEM degree, really?
Ooh, I'm probably not the right person to ask. You might want to ask an HR person. Okay, I do not know the answer to that current question. Do you want me to address the previous question about
Sure, that'd be
challenging?
great.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree with Raluca and Saranya that the scale of Amazon is probably the largest challenge. In addition, I would find that because we have offices in all parts of the world, sometimes working with other people in different time zones is actually quite a challenge, especially if you want to collaborate and you have to wait a day for a reply because you're just working in an absolutely different time zone. So sometimes things can drag on because you're waiting for an answer and they wait for an answer as well. Least challenging, I would agree, is my colleagues who sort of make make the work worth doing, really. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks. Beth, do you want to take the same question on? About the most challenging and the least challenging aspect of working at the company.
Okay, so yeah, so I'm autistic, so my answer is going to come from a slightly different place to the others. So for me, the most challenging is because it's so big, you have to, in order to have impact, you really have to bring everyone with you. You can't just kind of have an idea, go do it, and you're done. You have to get everyone trained up, everyone bought in, and that I find definitely the hardest. And what I find the least challenging is because we have a document-based culture, so anything new that's introduced to me, I'll probably be given a document to read, which I find a lot easier to consume than just having a conversation. And then to speak to the question about the STEM degrees, there are ways in. So for example, ontology is kind of one of those sort of lighter tech paths that's a good way in, because you can start off with a much lower level of self-taught tech, get into that, and then once you're on the job, you can progress through. And similarly, any other kind of tech light fields like that.
Thank you so much. Saranya, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially on the STEM degree, one thing that I would definitely chime in alongside Beth is the fact that there are folks in the organization who are knowledge engineers who are able to contribute a great deal, and some do not hold a STEM degree, or maybe they do not go heavy on the science and technology aspects as much as it is required for a science, scientist or engineer role within Amazon.
Great, thank you. Maybe that's a good question for both people that were already at Amazon before the start of the pandemic and people that moved from one company to the other. So how was the moving from the office to working from home transition or like for you? Raluca, do you want to take that one?
Sure. actually, just before having to work from home, I felt a bit overwhelmed by the amount of meetings that I had. So for me, just that moment was easy. However, after a while, it became hard because it felt like the communication wasn't as crisp as if I was there. But the things did change. And the way I was supported was, first of all, at the beginning, the people in my team were understanding. So everyone just take time. Like other people have children around, they have duties at home, they may be interrupted by the post person coming, all these kinds of things. So there was an understanding. There was also an understanding in some people might actually have to go to the office. So we had this thing in place where, okay, some people may need to go, so we may have to give them badges and allowance to enter the building. I was also encouraged to do my home setup. So if I needed a keyboard and a mouse, I was allowed, and the whiteboard, I was allowed to get these and expense them. And overall, yes, and overall I was told, I was asked, are you okay? Is everything okay? What is your feedback? From my point of view, it was fine. But I'm sure other people might have had issues. So I hope, I'm happy to hear from other people, maybe.
Who wants to take a chance at this answer? Maybe Gordon, Saranya?
I can go. I mean, in my case, as you know, I joined the organization pretty much at the start of the pandemic, right? So it was an interesting experience because that's pretty much was the time when everyone was figuring out how to go about hiring people virtually, and pretty much the whole last year was all virtual in nature. I did not meet any of my teammates until now, so. That's interesting. But one thing that really stood out in terms of working from home and working for Amazon was number one, the onboarding was super smooth. Everything was clearly planned out. There was a good plan for the first month, and the people were, especially my teammates, were super supportive. And I also hired 4 more people into the team during the pandemic. So it was quite an interesting experience how everything was super streamlined and everything is continuously being optimized. So that's something that's quite noticeable. And being flexible also is super important. There are folks in the organizations who are living, alone in a room probably with their friends and want to visit the office so they can clear off their mind. So there are cases like that, and people who are like me with 2 children running around in the background. So yeah, we have had all possibilities, and I think we've done a great job supporting each other during this time.
It's great. Gordon, do you want to add to that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, I find working from home quite a good schedule. It certainly reduces my commuting because I cycle, and it used to take me about an hour a day of just commuting. But I still do go back to the office quite a lot, so maybe unlike the others, because some of my sort of work involves working on devices, and so I need to go back to the imaging lab to do experiments, for example, and to manage the servers and stuff. Yeah, so it's interesting what's going to happen like after this, how the flexible time will be, like how many days we go back in the office and so on.
Great. I will still finish this with Princess and Beth, if you can both kind of add to that. And then the next question actually is really interesting for all of you, I think.
So it's me. Yeah. So I joined Amazon really during this pandemic. So in this last 6 months, I have been to the office just once, which is just last week. It was all smooth. I initially thought that it will be a lot of challenge because to get into the team, to get a rapport with the team, when I'm new to the team, I can't talk to people, I can't introduce myself, or I cannot mingle with the people to discuss ideas. When I'm interrupted, I thought that how to ask someone, we will not know what they are working in. If they are deep dive into some work, then it would be disturbing. But it's absolutely, technology has improved so much with the Slack and with this channels, Google Hangouts. With Chime, I didn't face any issues in interacting with people. And last week when I really met the team, it wasn't like meeting a new team at all. Like the team was I was so connected to the team, and Gordon is actually my team member. So it was all like, they're all like welcoming, and even for discussing ideas or anything, for sharing ideas, I don't think work from home is stopping us from doing anything. This gives a lot of flexibility, and it saves a lot of time in commuting. I'm currently in London, so I can't even think of traveling to Cambridge every day. But in this last 6 months, I think I've saved a lot of time. And the one thing which is really bothering, but that happens when in a multicultural company, right, cross-national company, as Gordon has pointed out, since Amazon works in different parts of the world. So when I want to communicate with the US team, whatever is the issue I face, that's the same issue I face in this pandemic situation. I think for that, the solution is different. That doesn't come under this pandemic. So that would be my view.
Thank you. Beth, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so most of my contacts at work are with people who are in different countries anyway. So for me, it was just amazing. I could take the calls from home with no commute. And yeah, that was nice.
Thank you. The next question is for all of you from Paula, who has a question about how to kind of branch out from just quote unquote standard backend software engineering to going to a bit more specialized discipline. So would you say that it's that is more a matter of taking an opportunity in your career, or kind of being a bit more controlling about and kind of directional about the trajectory that you want to take through adding courses to kind of a general software engineering kind of prior knowledge, right? So if you want to go to machine learning or things like hardware engineering, would you say that it's more a matter of having to specialize through studies, or can you also do it through your kind of like a career decision based on the company that you're working at?
Maybe I can take this question. I have some relevance here because when I started out, I was more focused on the science part, but still not specifically machine learning, right? So that's something that evolved over time, and I was more working on the statistical side of things when I started out my career. And then I moved on to a role as a manager, but then that was still lingering in my mind, and I was seeing technologies evolve. So at that point, I was quite interested in shifting my career path from being a manager for an engineering team to moving on to a role which was heavily focused on machine learning. So the first steps that I took there was to self-learn a little bit by going through different courses, getting your hands dirty by doing a small toy project or something along those lines, and kind of gathering to see where you could go from there, right? And at a certain point, you will level out and you know that, okay, that I need more support and help. There is more depth to it. And at that point, I decided to take up my master's degree that specializes in machine learning. So it depends on what level of detail you would like to go to, or probably you're at a state where you already have a lot of depth from your educational background that you don't have to go for a master's degree. So it depends on where you are at that point in time when you're trying to move to either ML or quantum computing or anything along those lines.
Raluca,
do you want to go for that?
Yes. I also think I have some relevant experience in that. So I was in academia. I was doing things around software engineering mostly. And what I wanted to do was to work in a company and be able to understand what customers want and combine that with engineering. So I moved to Microsoft Research, and I did a 1-year contract, a postdoctoral contract. And within that project, I managed actually to focus more on analyzing data, analyzing some traces from storage. I didn't know machine learning. I knew only basic statistical methods, and I learned on the go more statistical methods. And then when I moved as a software engineer at Amazon 2.5 years ago, I thought that, even though I wasn't a software engineer, I tried to find my way in a data science role. So I continued doing statistical analysis for performance. And more recently, I started learning about machine learning because I feel like an applied scientist, I need to know that. And partly I'm doing this learning on my own. So I take courses. I don't formally enroll in the courses, but I take them on my own. And partly I plan on applying in my day-to-day job. So if you can do this, if you have the opportunity to choose a job where you can actually apply and learn what you want to learn, I think that is really useful. And that will give you an end goal.
Thank you so much. Princess and Gordon, you work on specific kind of device-oriented, hardware-oriented, or team. So can you give more a bit color to this question, and what was your experience like? I know it might be different for both of you. Gordon with a PhD and maybe Princess with a completely different background prior to devices. Gordon, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, my degrees were actually quite different from what I'm doing right now. So I was trained as an electrical engineer or electronics, and thus when I went into industry, I first started with relatively high-level programming languages, like I mentioned, like JavaScript and a proprietary sort of scripting language. When I went to my first job that required sort of like low-level programming, like using C or C++, it was actually a steep learning curve. But I was quite happy that the management was understanding, and my colleagues were also very helpful in getting me up to speed. More recently, in terms of machine learning, I've tried using it some, but I think the area that I'm in doesn't really suit that much the machine learning. For one, you need a lot of data, and that's what we generally don't have when we are developing the software. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's my experience.
Thank you. Princess, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, sure, Mike. Yeah. So like Gordon said, I started my, basically I'm a engineering graduate in electronics and communication. So I started my career as an embedded consumer electronics thing. But down the line, when I was traveling in the software industry, I found this C, C++ to be very charming. And I changed from assembly from very low level to I switched on to the CCPP. So while switching from assembly to CPP, it was a lot helping because you're moving from, it's a high level language when you compare to assembly. CCPP is a very high level language which you can easily pick it up. So, but with respect to machine learning, as Gordon said, though in our specific to our domain, like image video, we don't use much of a machine learning, but related to computer vision, we use a lot of image related computer vision. So these days I started picking up the CV. So I started with Python and OpenCV. So really who wants to start with such a machine learning in terms of image and video, they could pick it up from OpenCV, which is available for the people. And you can learn it on your own. It's not like you can catch it up. You need not enroll in formal courses or something. There are a lot of YouTube videos. There are a lot of commercially available data where you can pick it up from. Machine learning, I have not done much of into that, but with respect to OpenCV and kind of a little bit into the computer vision, we can grasp it like this. Yep.
Thanks. Beth, coming from a math background, what was the amount of of maybe, pure software engineering learning that you had to do, if you ever had to do that, if you thought you didn't have enough coding skills compared to your math background? What would you say?
So the coding I'd done as a mathematician was very much kind of one-off scripts to get the results I needed, rather than production development that has to be maintained for a long time. So yeah, so I mean, I'm not kind of writing software myself, but that was kind of one of the blockers for me, was that because I didn't have that experience of writing stuff that a team could own, then that was kind of one thing that stopped me getting software jobs.
Is that something that you have explored in the past, and or not really?
With hindsight, I wish I had, but instead I kind of went into the management track because it looked like a faster, immediate way to make progress. And now I switched back out to being a manager. Kind of, I regret that, but that's like 10 years ago now. So and I feel like I like where I'm at now.
Thank you. I think that's a good transition for the next question. Xuan is asking basically for advice for a junior developer, someone that just started their career. What would be kind of tips, or looking back at your own career so far, what would be an advice that you would give to yourself after 1 year of experience in an engineering role, I'd say? Yeah, Raluca, do you want to take that on?
Yes, I would actually like to answer a bit more on the previous question, that I think it's fitted to this one as well. If you are looking to a job in machine learning, or you look into getting into the machine learning space, there are other entries than just learning the machine learning algorithms and finding a job that fits those algorithms. So you could try data engineering, which is a grounding, a foundation of machine learning, actually, extracting sources of data, cleaning the data, and just making the pipeline, the infrastructure for the machine learning algorithms to work with the data. And this involves a lot of software engineering. Or just statistics, data analysis that is not necessarily machine learning. This is something that I did. If you know how to draw distributions, or if you know already how to visualize data and what kind of visualizations there are, this is also very important, and it is foundation for future machine learning algorithms. Understanding the data and understanding how to process it, how to extract simple things out of it. Now, if I was to give myself an advice for a few years ago, I think I would take more into my own hands, which I know that many of you here are doing already. So not relying on jobs fitting me perfectly. I think this is also important. That would actually go more than, like, that would go 5-6 years ago. And try to, like, if you are in a space that is large enough, Amazon is one of them, you can find a way to move around, and also get mentors as soon as possible, mentors in the area that you want to work in. And 1-2 mentors that you can talk to, and that are experts in the area that you want to excel, and that are able to give you technical advice and also career advice tailored to you directly.
Thank you. That's great advice. I would agree with that. Francis, do you want to go and give your opinion on this question and your advice?
Can you repeat the question once?
Sure thing. So if you would look at yourself, back when you started your career in software engineering, and after 1 year, what kind of advice would you give someone to kind of grow into their careers and yeah, and kind of improve in terms of getting used to a code base or even tackling a new stack on a new role?
Yep. So when I started my career, I didn't have much an idea about what this industry is about. So I was a studious student in college, so I got placed in the college. So I just got into the industry without knowing what am I going to work, where am I going to work. So if you have a clear focus on what you want to do, when you do engineering, do a lot of research on where is your interest lies on, right? So some people will be good in logic, some people will be good in algorithms, some people will be good in like giving presentations. So that will segregate you where you fall upon, whether you are a front-end user or whether you want to work in the back-end programming. So that kind of initial idea, if you jump in with kind of some initial idea, then it will take you, the stream will take you, what kind of things will suit you. The industry, right, the managers and the technical leaders in the industry, they help you a lot with their career advice. They give you a perfect vision where you could fall on, which analyst you have the prospects are. So if you have some idea and if you go, I think you would progress faster, and you can dive deep, and you can confine your path, and you can go longer. So that is what I would tell for a fresher before, if anyone gets into the thing. So after a year of once you get into the field, if you have the opportunity where you can have whatever tasks come to you, I would say that you go ahead with it. You give your hands on, you feel that how you feel when you're doing different work, and then choose what is the path that you want to do. Don't confine yourself in the very beginning without knowing what are all the options you have and which could be better, right? That would be my technical advice. So when I have been in different genres. I have worked as a software development engineer, I have worked as a low level engineer, I have worked as a tech leader, project manager, but in all the genres, I felt that I am really enjoying as a software developer. So it was kind of a circle for me, and I came back to as a developer role. So try different things, whatever is available to you, and then choose whatever you feel the best is for you.
Thank you so much. That's a very uh, thoughtful kind of answer there. Saranya, do you want to give your advice if you can?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. There are two things that I would like to advise on, right? So number one is, especially a person who has joined an organization with 1 year experience, the important thing is sometimes you get too much into the detail, right? So having a view of working on the detail as well as understanding the big picture of why you are doing a certain piece of coding or how it relates to the business is something super important for people who join the organization, right? And the second thing is context. In which context does your coding fit in? Seeing the big picture and learning about a piece of code that you're working on, how does it fit into delivering to the customer, right? So being able to seeing it through to the end is something that you have to develop over time. Probably a year into your career is a good time to start building those behaviors.
Beth and Gordon, maybe.
Yeah, I think most of the other speakers have already covered what I want to say. So in summary, there are two things I think are quite important. First, as Princess said, yeah, have an open mind and try different things. So you might find something that you didn't think that you would actually enjoy and like. So while early in the career, do try different things. And the other is, yeah, get a mentor or someone who is willing to give you advice and help you build your career. Yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you. Beth, anything additional that you would want to add?
I think maybe kind of look for things that are adjacent to what you want to do. So for example, I've seen a lot of software engineers who want to get into ML go and build the sort of basic software parts for machine learning and people, and kind of bring the skills you've already got to new situations where you can then learn from the people around you.
Very interesting. For all of you in your kind of different disciplines, where do you see the new trends? For example, in ontology, what do you see the discipline going in the future? It's a question coming from Khaled or Khaled. I don't know which one of the two pronunciation is best. But in all of your disciplines, where do you see the new trends? I don't give any time frame for that, but how far do you see on how far you see in the future, but what do you see in your respective kind of discipline when it comes to technology and science? Maybe Beth again.
Okay, so I think for mine and for anything else related to data, I think it's like a really exciting time where everybody there's more data available. There needs to be far, far more than we've already got. There's yeah, so I don't kind of have a lot of specifics, but it seems like more and more places are just where previously they might have had like very low tech solutions for their data, they're now adopting a lot more big solutions. And so I think that's kind of just creating more and more opportunities.
Thank you. Raluca and maybe Saranya, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe Raluca go first and then I'll chime in as well.
Okay. From my point of view, I think I'm going to answer in a wishful thinking way, but I also don't see any other ways. So I think that data science would have to go into helping solve the major problems that we see in the world: climate change, social justice, justice for, Black people and other minorities. And I don't want to live in a world where these problems aren't solved and where data science is used to cause more pain. Now, in a bit shorter term, I think there will be more data science used for optimization of the processes that we have. Yeah, and that's it.
Thank you. Yeah. Saranya, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to add on, right? So specifically working for Alex, one of the interesting things is the ability to understand natural language is something that's constantly evolving, and we are getting better at it. I think I see that field growing in a great deal. Not just that, anything related to vision as well is something interesting space to look out for.
Great, Princess. Do you have an opinion on this question on trends and where kind of like image, computer vision, other devices, where all that is going?
Yeah, the world is going towards finding everything digital, right? Like the world wants a better one, sophisticated, with ease. They don't want to strain much. So people want to do everything. I think artificial intelligence has a very big market which is emerging and it is going up. Say in medical imaging or in thinking. There are several investments going on in researching like how you can understand what the brain is thinking, right? So that's a mind-blowing technology, like the Google mirrors or reading what you are reading from your mind. That kind of a technology is what the world is approaching towards. I think artificial intelligence has its world. That's my point.
Thank you. Gordon?
Yeah, so from the photography point of view, I see the trend is that now almost every device will have a camera. So it will have very interesting implications from a sociological standpoint, like, will there be a pushback? People will, either start accepting it or will start pushing against, being photographed or video everywhere. Technically, I think computational photography will become very prevalent. You can already see it with the Google Pixel cameras where they enhance images to give you an amazing quality. so ML will come into this. You will have like generative adversarial networks like GANs to even further basically make up images that look completely realistic but are artificial. So you can increase resolution or do all sorts of amazing things with that. So it's a very interesting but at the same time quite scary trend.
Thank you all so much. So I have a question on mentoring and how would you manage to find a mentor? I guess in a corporate environment, it will be probably easier if some companies kind of assign, once companies assign mentors to kind of newcomers. But if you didn't have this opportunity at work, or if you are still a student, what would be the best advice to kind of find a mentor and get mentoring outside of those contexts? I'd say to start, actually, I can start with saying you can find a mentor at codebar. You just need to kind of ask, but what are your advice, or what have you done in the past as well to find mentors, or when mentees reached out to you? Saranya, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, I had two different experiences, right? So one was when I was in academia doing my master's. I used to attend lots of events, and there were a couple of people who I would like to go and attend their presentations and learn about. So I would reach out to them and ask if it would be something that they would be willing to help me with in terms of mentoring. So I've had a mentor who I reached out on LinkedIn, and I was able to catch up with them for a coffee, and that's one thing that I've found very useful. The other thing that I would generally suggest folks who are studying as well is trying to understand who are key people in their area of studies, right? So trying to spend time with them, network with them is something that you would learn from. So those are the two aspects that I would suggest.
Beth, thank you. Saranya, Beth, do you want to try to answer that question or give advice?
So yeah, I've never kind of got on with formal mentoring. I do it, but I never got on with having it. I instead I just sort of informally, if I meet people at events or through my work, just kind of, if they seem to have wisdom, then I'll ask them questions until they kind of get sick of me asking.
Brute force. Yeah, I like that. Raluca, do you want to answer the question?
Yes. So I'm going to give the most recent ones. When I joined Amazon, I actually passed an interview at Alexa, and I wasn't very happy with the position and with how the team was going to evolve even before accepting the offer. So I wrote on LinkedIn to a principal engineer in Amazon, and I saw that there he had we are hiring at AWS in Cambridge. So I wrote to him, and he put me in contact. Of course, he wasn't hiring himself directly, but he did put me in contact with a manager. And I ended up, yes, in that particular team. I accepted the offer in that team. And inside Amazon, I think when you are inside an organization, it's good to get in touch, to talk to people who have been in the team for longer, for years. If you are new, they will ask them to explain the system architecture, or to give you advice on what work to do. And I think it's also important, after you've gathered some experience, to go to mentors and tell them, look what I did. Can you please give me your opinion on my work? And write these, like one of my mentors, what she told me was, just write them regularly, every month, every 2 weeks. Write to them, look what I did, what do you think about this? And many people will answer back and will give you advice, and it's free.
That is great advice. Thank you so much. Princess, do you have an advice for people?
Yeah, networking is a very good way. Like Saranya said, like attending in different events. If you are watching keen on what is happening around on the market where you want to get into, you will learn a lot of things, right? Leader is a good listener. It's the other way around also. You start listening, you start understanding what is the things happening around. You keep following the key leaders in the thing. You have a lot of opportunities these days. You have LinkedIn, you have a lot of blogs going on. So when you keep watching those kind of blogs and those posts from the LinkedIn or Twitters, when you ask questions, people are ready to answer you, and they listen. They want people, they share their knowledge. So there are a lot of opportunities. It's us, we have to come out of the shell, we have to approach. You have to seek your questions, you have to build your questions, get your questions properly, you can easily find out the answers. The first thing is like we need to understand what kind of questions we have in mind, what kind of advice we need. We need to have some understanding about ourselves, what kind of advice you are looking into, whether it is technical or professional or career advice. Once you know what you want, I think you will go towards it. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much. Gordon, have you happened to mentor, and have you been a mentee in the past as well?
Yes, I've done both. Um, yeah, so Amazon has a formal some mentoring scheme, and I believe other companies also should have. I'd like to add though something which I don't think anyone has said yet. When you're in school or university, I think it's really worthwhile identifying seniors, people maybe 1 or 2 years sort of ahead of you, uh, doing sort of more or less the same sort of course, or having the same industry plans as you might have, and kind of shadow them, ask them for help, and more importantly, remain in contact with them after they graduate, so that when they get into some company, you have a contact in that company, and you can sort of ask for, say, if you want to join the company, you certainly are at an advantage if someone recommends you than if you just cold call the company.
Thank you. Would you have any advice for developers and kind of first-time developers, and for preparing for technical interviews specifically? Princess, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I recently prepared for Amazon interview, so I can tell from my own experience, right? Like, even though I have a huge years of experience in the software development, when I got a call from Amazon, I typically searched what is the expectation from Amazon, right? Before you sit on any interview, read about the people who you're discussing it with. When you know the interviewers, you know what their domain is, you know what kind of questions what they would ask, or what kind of domain expertise they are expecting, right? No one is expecting in my experience, what I would say is no one is expecting you to understand everything in the world. They're not expecting that you should know everything, right? What they are expecting from you is whether you are able to think, you're able to approach the problem, right? So before preparing for your interview, you should see what is the technology they are working in, what kind of expertise they want, where you need some knowledge at what is your level, and how you have to prepare. That is the kind of technical thing that you have to prepare, right? And for coding, there's a lot of coding in almost every technical interview. You have coding, so brush up your coding skills. You create your own problems and try to find out solutions. That will improvise your coding skills, right? So when you know the problem, you will be able to think what are all the constraints you have to think. And in any problem, the problem solving is one of the major thing in the technical interviews. And for the problem solving, they are expecting, the interviewers are expecting, if you're able to see through the whole thing, right from the requirements till the testing, right? So that's the kind of knowledge whether you are able to leverage. So that's what you have to think about, in my opinion. Yeah.
Thank you. Saranya, do you have an advice also from I guess from a management perspective, from a more senior perspective, what you would expect from a more junior person in your team, or on other teams? I guess you're kind of seeing people from other teams as well.
Yeah, I think Princess articulated it very well. So when you come into the interview, we are not going to expect you to know everything in the world, right? So especially from a problem-solving perspective, taking a good structured approach to think about the problem, asking the right questions to understand the requirements when you're interviewing is very important. And on the coding side of things, a good grasp of the basics is super important. Even if it means that you're not able to completely solve the coding problem, it is very important to be able to think through it in a structured way, being able to talk to some of the fundamentals of the problem that you're trying to solve is super important. So those are the two things that I would normally look for when interviewing. So, and again, don't be shy to ask questions to the interviewer, right? So that's something important. Practice before, like Princess said, in the sense that take a couple of coding problems, give it a go. There are lots of simulators where you can try out coding problems yourself. So that would be my advice.
Thank you. Raluca, do you have tips, tricks, advice?
Yes, I would do mock-up interviews. I would try to see if I can figure out the problem in 1 hour. I think this is a great, I mean, we still didn't get around being like in interviews, we have only 1 hour. And sometimes for the coding exercise is 25 minutes only. So I would want to have to look at a range of problems, and usually some solutions are repetitive. So I would want to know largely a set of possible solutions, so that when in the interview, I would be able to to give a solution, even if not optimal, I would be able to give the solution quickly. So that, I think, mock-up interviews are a good way to check that you are able to do that. And specific to Amazon, we have also the leadership principles, which are very important. And I would ask you, if you are going to apply at Amazon, to look at those leadership principles and think about situations in your career. It doesn't have to be about coding. It can be about anything that you've been working on in the past, may have been a completely different area. I think having a good, well-argumented answer for the leadership principles, it definitely can make or break the result of the interview.
Thank you so much, Beth. I guess your approach will be a bit different, or maybe not, actually. Would you give a bit more kind of advice and maybe your take on technical interviews?
So I think I definitely echo everything everyone said. Also, I think kind of a couple of other things is, one is, if it's at Amazon or somewhere like that, you'll have multiple interviews through the day. And so don't let any one mistake get you down through the rest of the day, because if you do one bad interview and then 4 great ones, that's a lot better than like putting it off your stride. And the other, I think, is I kind of try to enjoy it, because you're in this because you like solving these problems. And if I'm interviewing somebody who's obviously enjoying the problem solving and spinning out ideas and yeah, willing to show their thinking and that sort of thing, and clearly has passion, I'm a lot more kind of inclined, whatever their previous knowledge and experience.
Yeah, I guess showing excitement is a big key. Gordon, do you have advice on this question?
Yeah. So in terms of preparation, I would say number one is read the job spec. So see what they actually ask for, what's essential and what's good to have, and try to have good questions for all of those. The other thing is try to know sort of the nature of the interviews of particular companies. Like, for example, at Amazon, they always ask about leadership principles. So for those, use the STAR system, they call it. So basically, answer such questions with describing the situation, the task, the action, and the result. Okay, so that you put yourself in the best light. At the same time, while preparing this, come up with sort of good questions to ask the interviewer as well. Almost all interviewers will ask if you have any questions at the end, and you want to have some good ones, both to show that you're serious about it, that you've researched the company, and also just for your own good. So because you might have some unanswered questions, that's the perfect opportunity to find out, like say, the work culture of that place. Other than that, I think the other speakers have covered it. Yeah.
Thank you. I actually have a question for you all, especially for those who have interviewed during since the start of the pandemic. Would you say there's a big difference interviewing through kind of visual conference and kind of an in-person interview, or would you say that it's pretty much the same? Princess, maybe?
I was hesitating when I was giving an interview over everything over online, but that really didn't make much of a difference. Like instead of the whiteboard, we replaced it with the virtual whiteboard online. So I don't think there is you need to be concerned about applying online. So it is the virtual world. Now we are living in a virtual world when everything can be answered online. One thing what I would miss in case of the interviewing in person is like um, your personality trait, right? So if you're given a problem, how you're approaching, or what kind of, whether you're composed, whether you are getting tensed, those kinds of things you'll be better observed if it is in person. So I think that is why even if you're stiff and confident, even if the way how you're proceeding, that kind of things you may not be able to showcase in case of the virtual thing. Otherwise, there is no major gap or we need to fill up by means of this online thing.
Great. Saranya, maybe you have an opinion
Yeah,
on
of
this?
course. I think from interviewing with Amazon all virtually, right? So I was quite nervous and worried as well because it was a whole long day of interview with different set of people, both on technical coding and all these different set of things. And it was the first time I was doing it all virtually. I think most of it went well. I was um, struggling a bit, especially from a problem-solving perspective. Generally, I'm a person who runs to the board, kind of, more visual in nature rather than talking through things. So initially, I found it a bit struggling, but then the interviewer was kind enough to kind of show me an app where I can go and write things and draw and express my opinion. So that was super useful. But one thing that I would miss out is if we were to go ahead and interview in an organization, you get to see your team, sit down and have lunch with them probably, or catch up with a few people for coffee. That aspect I would definitely miss. But that's what happened with my previous organization when I was interviewing. I sat with 12-member team for lunch, trying to get to know them a little bit better. But that aspect I did miss here.
Yeah, understand. Gordon?
Yeah, so I haven't actually sort of been an interviewee since the pandemic, but I've been an interviewer. So the big change I noticed is it's much harder to draw anything. So actually this ties in with the earlier question, like how do you prepare for an interview? So one of the things I would recommend is get a whiteboard, and get something like a a whiteboard marker or something, so that on the video camera, if the app does not have a facility to draw, and anyway it's usually quite hard to draw with a mouse, you can sketch on a whiteboard to show sort of what you mean. So I think that is one of the big changes. It's hard to draw anything, to describe, especially when it comes to, say, a coding exercise. You might want to illustrate certain things, like where you store stuff in memory and stuff like that. Explaining data structures like stacks or whatever. Drawing is sometimes much easier. Yeah, and it's also the personal touch before and after the interview. So being just able to meet that person, shake hands with the person and all that. I think that's lost in the online way, and well, we'll see. We will probably adapt to it. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. Raluca, if you've interviewed people, or if you have interviewed before and after the pandemic, maybe you can give a little bit of your point of view on this question.
Sure. I haven't interviewed myself during the pandemic, but I've been interviewing people. So I'm probably going to disagree with other people here. I think, so from my point of view, it didn't change much. I think it only helped me feel more comfortable behind the screen because I don't have to, like, I'm also a bit nervous when I'm interviewing someone. I'm rooting for them, but I think it was easier for me interviewing. And I also think that people who are more introverted, who are shy, probably would feel a bit better behind the screen. They are in their home. Everything is the way they were preparing. So it might help them. And I also like that if you are nervous, or if you're fidgeting, it doesn't show. So there's, I think, from my point of view, it would be a bit less biased as an interviewer. And I hope so. Yeah, there are, of course, the perks of actually going to an interview, probably traveling somewhere, meeting the people that's not going to be there. So it's maybe not going to be the same experience. I think that's all I have to add.
Last question. I guess the last question that I would kind of ask is if you see yourself more as an engineer or a scientist, if that can even be kind of decoupled. Beth, what would you say?
I'm an engineer, definitely.
Saranya?
I see myself as a bit coupled, having started as an engineer and then moving on to a science role. So yeah, a bit of both, I guess.
Princess, I would guess engineer, but that's just me.
Engineer.
Raluca and Gordon.
I'm an applied scientist. I can't hide. I'm a scientist. I would say problem solver.
Sorry, I would say I'm an engineer.
Engineer, thank you so much. I don't think we have any more question, so I might think about giving you back those extra 15 to 10 minutes. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you for your time. It was not a long one, but it's definitely an hour out of your lunch to give us all information on and advice on careers and science and technology. So thank you all so much.